Ronel is 12 and works full-time in the sugarcane plantations of the Philippines.
Layan Ngara alas 6, alas 7. Anduyan kami, alas 11.
Across the world, 218 million children as young as 5 and 6 are engaged in child labor. 70%, over 150 million, work in agriculture. While the good news is that child labor has declined by 11% in the last 4 years, much more needs to be done. The ILO and its social partners from member governments and employers and workers' organizations have committed themselves to eliminating the worst forms of child labor by 2016, including hazardous child labor in agriculture. But what is child labor? Child labor does not include all work done by children. Worldwide, there are 318 million children carrying out some form of work. A third of these children are not considered child laborers. They contribute to the family's well-being, helping out with tasks outside school hours. The remaining 218 million, however, are engaged in child labor, 126 million of whom are involved in hazardous child labor. At the ILO, child labor represents work which by its nature or way it is carried out harms, abuses and exploits a child or deprives a child of an education. Hazardous child labor is work in dangerous or unhealthy conditions that could result in children being killed, injured or made ill because of poor safety and health standards. In agriculture, child laborers are particularly at risk. Agriculture is one of the 3 most dangerous and underregulated economic sectors worldwide for all workers. And children are at greater risk than adults when working in the same situation because their minds and bodies are growing and developing, and they also lack work experience. Some of the hazards child laborers face in agriculture are long working hours, carrying heavy loads over long distance, extreme temperatures, dangerous cutting tools, skin problems, injury or death from heavy machinery, loud noise, handling of toxic pesticides, exposure to high levels of organic dust, injury or disease from livestock and wild animals, and injury or death from falling. The ILO's international program on the elimination of child labor was launched in 1992. One of the first countries it focused on was Brazil. ILO's work here proves that eliminating child labor in agriculture can be done. Hundreds of Brazilian children in Heterolândia in the state of Bahia used to work in sisal production. They no longer do. There was no shortage of unemployed adults to do the job, but these children were cheaper, even though the conditions they worked in, dusty and hot, broke almost every rule in the book. Children breathe more deeply and frequently than adults. Regular exposure to organic dust put these child laborers at greater risk of developing allergic respiratory diseases, such as asthma.
Nós temos o trabalho da criança muito perigoso na área do sisal, na colheita, na hora de cortar o sisal. Nós temos em nosso município criança cega do olho na hora que foi se abaixar para cortar o sisal.
The situation for working children in the region is extremely dangerous. We have children who have been blinded because thorns from sisal leaves went into their eyes. We have children who have lost a hand in the shredding machine. They work without any protective clothing. So the unions are very concerned. We are committed, not just here in Heterolândia, but all across the country, to rescue the children from the exploitation, to put them into good schools so they can have a better future.
Nós acreditamos que dia a gente vamos tirar essas crianças do trabalho e colocar numa escola de qualidade para que essas crianças no futuro tenham uma vida melhor.
The majority of children have since been removed from Heterolândia's sisal production due to the success of a Goat to School program. Supported by the ILO and promoted by the National Confederation of Workers in Agriculture, goats are loaned to families who can use them for income if they remove children from work and send them to school. In the coffee and tea plantations of Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda, the ILO has been working with trade unions, employers' organizations and government to end child labor.
The unions have been very active and they've tried to sensitize employers that it is wrong to employ children. You deny them a lot of opportunities. and I think it has made an impact.
In Tanzania, the government has scrapped school fees, and primary school is now mandatory. Part of the national strategy to end child labor has also been to establish community child labor committees.
This process has enabled the government to withdraw more than 15,000 children out of nearly 60,000 who were in the worst forms of child labor in 11 pilot districts.
Much work remains to be done. Many children still labor in the plantations of East Africa. They face long, hot hours and are exposed to toxic chemicals and the pesticides sprayed on leaves. Children are at greater risk of harm from repeated exposure to pesticides than adults. They have a higher capacity to absorb toxic substances, whether through breathing or through the skin. In Cameroon, child labor is cheap labor in the cocoa plantations. It is also hazardous work. Children collect and carry dangerously heavy loads of cocoa pods. An ILO study found that 18% of the loads children were carrying weighed over 30 kilograms. Heavy loads like these can harm the development of children's bones, joints, and muscles, and may result in permanent disability. The children themselves prepare the pesticide mixtures and spray them onto the cocoa plants, pesticides which can cause permanent nerve damage. To make matters even worse, they work with no protective clothing or masks. In Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, and the Ivory Coast, over 150,000 children in 2002 were involved in the handling and application of pesticides on cocoa plantations. The ILO and local NGOs have since set up a pilot project to help Cameroonian children leave the cocoa plantations and go to school.
Investing in a child today is better for the future, and keeping the child out of school is actually delaying the child's future and perpetuating poverty.
For now, the future of Ronel and his friends in the Philippines remains the same. Weeding, cultivating, turning soil, cutting sugarcane, harvesting, and applying fertilizers and pesticides. Ronel says his hands itch, a reaction to the pesticides he handles daily. In the Philippines, children in the sugar plantations have been reported to work 10 hours a day, with only Sunday afternoons off. They earn less than $1 a day. Ronel says he has no choice, but like every child, he has dreams and aspirations, and they do not include being poisoned by chemical pesticides and wounded from a sharp blade.
Ano lang dyan to? Mais sudah tadi